What's a hobby that's an instant red flag? Personally, I'm not terribly interested in someone who is an avid video game or card player. If the guy would rather play a game than hang out with me, it's a problem. Or if he plays hours and hours a day and is also unemployed, then that's an issue. How often do you play? Like several times a week? Then yes, that might be quote unquote too much. Unless you can find a girl who shares the same interests or has her own hobby that keeps her busy several days a week. But if you're only occupied with one tournament a week, then I don't see the big deal. My roommate plays a lot of video games, but his girlfriend, also my roommate, is occupied with homework or playing the game with him, and it doesn't seem to be an issue in their relationship. He also manages to go to school and work, so it's not like he's just sitting around playing games all day. On the other hand, if a guy has a solid job and a good work life balance, then it shouldn't really matter what he does in his spare time, hobby wise. I mean, unless his hobby is psychotic or something. Some girls don't mind the gamer type. I'm just turned off by it because only like 10% of gamers I've ever met fall into that I got it together category. But again, it's my personal experience, and maybe I just live in a town with a lot of crappy people. For example, most of the gamer types I know either live at home or in a house like with four other people. Most work part time or just do odd jobs despite being fully capable of work and able to spend 8 plus hours a day playing a video game. I guess living like that is more acceptable if you're 20, but I'm pushing 30 and don't find that attractive at all. Or guys who routinely spend like 12 hours playing a game several nights a week. Now that's a problem. I dated a guy like that briefly and it just felt like I was single, very unfulfilling. The ones who work full time also spend basically the same amount of time gaming, so their entire day is taken up by work and then games. Guys can't expect a girl to be okay with them being available only one day a week. It doesn't sound like you're spending too much time on your hobby, unless those times with friends are like every day or like all night several days a week. But every girl is different. If the girl is flat out disinterested in gaming, then I'd wager she's more likely to find it a problem. I know plenty of girls who are into gaming to varying degrees and have little issue with their boyfriends having a reasonable degree of involvement in gaming. Story 2. Probably not having hobbies is an issue. Everyone should have something they strive for, and that makes them happy to put in the effort. You're not a bad person if you have no hobbies, but I bet you're not as happy as you could be either. Sleep is not a hobby, eating should not be a hobby, but researching, mapping, and touring local or exotic restaurants could be. Cooking is also a good hobby. My ex had zero hobbies. It became exhausting to be with her because she was constantly looking to me to entertain her. When we were both off work for the day, she was glued to me. If I wanted to do something I enjoyed that she did not like or could not participate in, then she'd complain. So I was stuck in a constant state of trying to find things we both enjoyed. We were together for 3 years. When we broke up, the next day felt like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. Having no hobbies is definitely a red flag. And people ask me what my New Year's resolution was for 2024. In previous years, I would have said nothing, save more money, I guess, or cut out insert bad habit here. This year, I actually had one, learn to play the guitar. My wife and I have a baby now, and over the last year, I have felt I needed something on the side to do. It has been hitting me that I've always had a love for music. I used to play the piano when I was a kid and loved it until I ran into a bad teacher. He was way too strict, easy to lose his temper, and just sucked the fun out of it for me. I had a fair chunk of money left over for my Christmas work bonus and decided I'd use it to buy an acoustic guitar and learn to play it. Now I hate the fact that I didn't dive into this years before. My dad never saw the use of getting into something unless it was working towards a monetary goal. I just want to play instruments, man. Forcing myself out of the mindset my dad put me in felt like a huge step forward. Now I'm finally just taking an hour or two to myself every evening to learn and practice, and I'm all the happier for it. Setting goals for myself, hitting those goals, and just enjoying myself. My wife even picked up art again. So there, everyone needs a healthy outlet. Be it creative, collecting stuff, tabletop gaming, etc. The world isn't going to hand you selfish happiness, so you might as well grab it for yourself. Story 3. I dated a girl who was into astrology and weird witchy stuff. She was also really into ancient mythology, poetry, literature, and her own writing. She saw it as a bit of fun, although to what extent she actually believed in it, I'm still not sure. For me, it was kind of an epiphany because I also read a lot of books and had many conversations at the time about the importance of narrative and ritual to people. Whether something is real or not doesn't necessarily change how meaningful it is. To an extent, we're just making up everything as we go along anyway. All right, said Susan. I'm not stupid. You're saying humans need fantasies to make life bearable. Really? As if it were some kind of pink pill? No, humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. Tooth fairies? Hogfather's little, yes, as practice, you have to start out learning to believe the little lies. So we can believe the big ones? Yes, justice, mercy, duty, that sort of thing. They're not the same at all. You think so? Then take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve through it the finest sieve. And then show me one atom of justice, one molecule of mercy, and yet, waved a hand, and yet you act as if there is some ideal order in the world, as if there's some rightness in the universe by which it may be judged. Yes, but people have got to believe that, or what's the point? My point exactly. I think that if someone wants to believe in something or tell themselves a nice story to make sense of the world, then that's perfectly okay. As long as they acquiesce to reality when it's actually important and don't use the stories as an excuse to do monstrous things. I make a point of saluting magpies for luck. It's stupid and based on nothing, but it doesn't harm anyone and it makes me happy. I went into the woods once with her and her friends. They had a bonfire and threw symbols of stuff they were worried about onto it to burn away the bad feelings or something. It was a lovely way to spend an evening, an excuse to get tipsy and talk about things, and it genuinely seemed to help her a lot. Is that so bad just because it's based on an irrational thought? Anyway, this is a fairly common red flag to many people, but it made me think about certain beliefs people have. Story 4. I've heard a lot of people say that horse girls are crazy. It's not quite as mysterious as some make it out to be. Horses are huge pets that are an enormous time and money sink to own. Basically, if you're going to have horses, well, you're going to have to mold your life around horse ownership rather than adding a pet to your life like a dog or cat and making adjustments. You'll need a barn, fields, fences, hay, a trailer, a truck to pull the trailer, shoes, vet stuff, and tack. Basically, deciding to own horses means devoting most aspects of your life to them. The few aspects that won't be devoted to it are the most inconsequential ones, like your choice of dinnerware. All of that devotion is usually combined with some sort of competition with the horse, so you're adding a stressful element to all of this as well. The end result is that dating a horse girl pretty much means to her that you're auditioning to prove to her how well you can fit into the life and role she already has planned out, and has had planned out since she was probably a kid. It's not an equal partnership, and you don't have half a say in anything. The horses were there first and are non negotiable, so you're pretty much along for the ride. If you're going to become a horse guy and have a truck, sharing the horse stuff, and spend all of your available time and money on them, or she doesn't have any use for you. All of that being said, however, the ride can be fun, you just have to know when it's time to hop off. I stuck around way too long, and it was the ugliest breakup I've ever gone through. She is really the only one of my exes that I could see in a bar tomorrow and wouldn't say hi. Looking back, she certainly was crazy, but being as generous as possible, I was also young and happily ignored all sorts of red flags she was waving because she was great and fun to spend time with. For an early 20s guy, that's really all the further you look before you leap. Still, the horses themselves were truly incredible animals. I was certainly glad to have gotten that experience with them while I was in that relationship. Caring for them, going on trail rides, etc. I wouldn't ever want to own one, but I can see how it becomes an obsession. Story 5. I used to tell girls a lot on Bumble before I found my current girlfriend in real life about the fact that I collect sports cards. I got a lot of the "that's nerdy" or "aren't those for little kids" type of comments before eventually being ghosted. It ended up being a pretty good screening process though, because what I typically didn't disclose is that my sports card collection was most recently appraised at $3.3 million, and I've made between 80 and 95K a year in the last 3 years buying and selling sports cards online and doing consignments for people as a 24-year-old. My current girlfriend showing interest in hearing about my card collecting as well as being supportive of my hobby of playing chess before knowing the monetary implications of that hobby was honestly the most attractive thing about her. At the end of the day, as someone can accept you having a hobby, whether that hobby is normal or otherwise, they are simply not worth your time or effort. Do you really want to be in a relationship with someone who can't appreciate your passion and joy for something you obviously care about? I really wish I had better advice other than this, but keep telling them about your hobby. Be proud of your passion for music, and eventually someone who isn't petty enough to judge you on a hobby, let alone one as cool as being a musician and or into music, will find you, and it will feel so much better because you stick to your guns and didn't settle for someone that wouldn't support you wholeheartedly. Anything else is a compromise, and picking a partner is no place for that. Story 6. Oh man, there are so many, I don't even know where to start. Collecting modern guns. In Germany, they make me feel less safe. Taxidermy that goes beyond. I'm fine with taxidermists, but I don't want to live in a house with stuffed animals. Being a hunter, weird experiences with acquaintances that were there. Social media star type people, they share too much and I like leaving the house without the internet following me. Obsession with repeat offenders. I love watching crime shows, but the way some people almost idolize them makes me sick. The guys that are all about gym and diet to the point it's all their life is about. Now, this screams body dysmorphia, and I'm not ready to therapy anyone else. Extreme sports, not ready to have my partner pass away on Mount Everest or in some complex sea cave. Traveling the world is a lovely hobby, but I have myalgic encephalomyelitis, and traveling is unbelievably painful and exhausting for me. AI generation and cryptocurrency, a huge conflict of interests. That's all I can think of right now. On the other hand, enthusiasm for insects, nature, games, and rock punk music would be perfect for me. We could just go to gigs together, play multiplayer games together, or go for a walk in the park and try to see how many cool bugs we can spot there. There are a lot of other hobbies where I definitely try to partake, even if it's not something I'm currently into. For example, if my partner was into Legos, I'd be hyped to build stuff with them too. Well, that's quite the spectrum, huh? There's something from quirky to concerning. Now, if you have your own red flag hobby, please do share it with me in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe while we're already halfway through these stories because there's a lot more coming up next. Also, doing that really helps out the channel. Story 7. Not really a red flag, but anything with insects or spiders. There's nothing morally against it, but my entomophobia will not allow it. My late brother-in-law had tarantulas. He loved them. He was a sweet man, but I just couldn't deal with the whole spider thing. Just no. Keep them away from me, please, and all is well. He wanted so badly to share his love of those spiders with me, but I'm terrified of spiders. I can't handle being around them at all. I admired his passion for them, and I would happily sit with him when he was sick and listen to him talk about his babies. I just couldn't handle being in the same room with them, even if they were in their enclosures. He was good about it, though. He never tried to force me into being around them. He would make a point to have them put in another room if I was over, so I felt comfortable. I miss him, and even though I am still terrified of spiders, I can look at them now when we go to the zoo and think of him and the big, scary spiders he loved. It helps that the zoo has ways of preventing them from escaping, you know? I could never handle a relationship with someone who loves spiders the way my brother-in-law did. That would be a deal breaker, and there's no way I could sleep peacefully at night with those things at my house. I'm so glad my husband is not a spider person. Story 8. Years ago, I dated a woman who, during our initial conversations, mentioned really liking Disney. I didn't find the comment odd, who, growing up in the 80s and 90s, doesn't like Disney movies and characters. I could quote lines offhand and have fond memories and nostalgia. Also, I've been to Disney World and she used to live near Orlando, so she went often. If anything, it was even a slightly relatable trait. Then I went to her place. Disney was everywhere. Photos from Disney World trips are in Disney-themed photo frames. Disney-themed dolls in the living room and a whole guest room full of them. Every single Disney twist of a popular board game, she owned it. She handed me a cup of water in a Daisy Duck-themed cup, and I'm pretty sure her dog's collar was branded with Disney characters. It was, interesting. We didn't last much longer for different reasons, but I can't say I ever thought about what it would be like to move in together. That would have been something. I don't know. Even dismissing the Disney theme itself, I'm just not all that materialistic. It was slightly smothering how much was just everywhere. Not hoarder level, but it didn't have to be. It was basically impossible to be in her place without being aware that you were surrounded by Disney trinkets. Story 9. Family vlogging. It completely violates children's privacy. Using kids to shore up your own online presence is not okay. As a person with a kid who didn't even really want kids, it's absolutely blowing my mind how easily some people do this. How messed up in the head do you have to be to put money over the privacy, safety, and dignity of your own? I don't even post regular innocent family photos of my kid on social media except for sending direct Snapchats to her dad and uncle. I'm far too paranoid about the kind of people that might see them, even though I'd like to think I'm not friends with anyone who would look at her in a bad way like that. And damn, that really just makes me so angry. When you have a kid, your entire purpose for the remainder of your life should be raising them to be the best version of themselves they can be and protecting them from the evils of the world as best you can. Also, posting every single thing on social media. I knew one dude from work who did this. It was annoying as all hell. I unfriended him when I was scrolling through and he had posted a selfie of himself in the bathroom and a caption describing what he was doing there. And oh, how can I forget? Doing pranks for content. Story 10. It's mostly when a guy doesn't seem to have much of a personality outside of his hobbies. I talked to a guy online who literally couldn't discuss anything outside of stock car racing. I personally don't know anything about it, and it doesn't interest me enough to learn about it whatsoever. So anytime I tried to talk about other interests, he was like, yeah, so, I don't know. Those conversations were boring. Or when a guy is super into sports, like my husband loves soccer because he's Costa Rican and a love for soccer is practically a requirement to be Latino. But he doesn't live and breathe it. He doesn't spend all of his time looking up stats, watching the games, and playing fantasy soccer if that exists. I went to school with dudes who were all about football, basketball, or baseball. Their rooms were decked out in sports paraphernalia. They only wore jerseys to school, and if they had hobbies outside of sports, I didn't know about them. Then there's hunting and fishing. I appreciate the sport. I understand that some animals are really overpopulated and need to be hunted for human safety, like deer, but the subject bores the hell out of me. From the guns to the closing to the actual act of hunting, it's a snooze fest for me. Story 11. Obsessing over anime, with everything in their life decorated in anime style from avatars to usernames and such, is not uncommon. I'm from Asia and have been watching anime for as long as I can remember, but it becomes weird and creepy when the obsession goes a bit too far. I feel that the older someone is, the weirder and creepier it becomes. Recently, a 35-year-old guy was hired at my workplace, initially seeming totally normal. However, the more comfortable he became, the more he revealed his true self. And his true self was the ultimate weeb. He only talked about anime, made constant references to it, and used Japanese words in conversations with his coworkers. When I asked if he had watched anything more mainstream with real actors like Game of Thrones or Stranger Things, in hopes of having a conversation about something we both knew or liked, he said no. He mentioned not having access to platforms like Netflix or HBO, but still, it felt a bit cringy. While it's common for young people to be obsessed with their hobbies and interests, entering the workforce often involves crafting a professional image. Mid-2000s emo hair with dark eyeliner just won't cut it. That's why older people obsessing over anime can come across as creepy. Story 12. Basically, any hobby that someone picks up because they think it makes them look smart, cultured, or refined. If you're actually super into wine and the economy, good for you. Keep doing you. If you're going to make constant pretentious comments about people who buy corner store wine and don't care about the stock market, you can mosey on out. Taking working out and nutrition to the extreme, I'd be happy to have an active partner who encouraged me to exercise and be healthier, but I couldn't deal with those with daily hours, long gym sessions, and extreme diets. Obsessions with motorcycles or cars or the absolute lowest he can sink, monster trucks. When I see such guys on Tinder, I know which way to swipe. Binge drinking coupled with partying every weekend is an instant nope. I know a lot of people who see extreme sports as a negative thing. The guy I've been dating is into mountain climbing and cycling, and he goes on grueling sports vacations. I'm actually okay with it. He has drive and discipline, and I admire that about him. But he won't commit to me because he wants to climb more dangerous mountains, risking his life, and says a relationship would be an emotional burden he doesn't want to carry on Everest. So perhaps you ladies have the common sense to rule this one out. Story 13. A lot of woman-hating stand-up comedians seem to be really popular with guys right now. That's a red flag. Gym bros, trophy hunting or fishing, substances more than occasional drinking, obsessive lawn care, and firearm collections are all part of this culture. Y'all, possibly the weirdest thing I've ever seen in real life was this guy's house. The house was really neat and clean. He lived alone. His walk-in closet did not contain clothing. It was floor-to-ceiling DVDs. I initially assumed it was an extensive adult collection. It wasn't. It was hunting DVDs showing all these animals being hunted. They weren't informational or instructional at all. It was just bizarre. I have rarely felt such existential dread as I did when registering what I was seeing. You know, it is good to have something you're passionate about, but there is that fine line between a healthy hobby and a weird obsession, you know what I mean? Too much of one thing is always a bad thing. Some of these are really morally wrong too, and yikes. So you can go ahead and click on the next video, Women Share Man-Child Red Flags, to see them from a woman's perspective. Story 3, that dude is cringeworthy. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.